Hi, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. Tonight is the third episode of our book club series. If you'd like to find the other episodes from our book club series, you can go to twobroadstalkingpolitics.com/book club. You can also find these episodes in our regular feed on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, well, everywhere you can find podcasts. Enjoy. Hey everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics. This is a book club episode, so I am here with my co-host Sophy. Hey Sophy.
Hey.
And we are joined by freelance writer Kaz Weida. Hi Kaz.
Hello.
And by actress and writer Elizabeth Thorp. Hi Elizabeth.
Hi ladies.
All right. So tonight, this is the third book club episode we have done, and we are talking about Elizabeth Warren's book, This Fight is Our Fight. So let's just start with sort of general overview questions. I will note at the start that when we read Kamala Harris's book, I said Kamala Harris was my favorite. Now we've read Elizabeth Warren's book, and I'm saying Elizabeth Warren is my favorite. So I may just be easily swayed, but that's my first impression. So what did you guys think sort of overall of the book?
This is Sophy. I loved it. Elizabeth Warren is kind of my obviously I love many candidates in this race, and I will vote for, whoever gets the Democratic nomination. But right now, Elizabeth Warren is the number one on my list and probably the person right now at the moment I'm planning to vote for. I'm so in love with her. I'm thinking about running for a delegate for her campaign. So I was almost there, and then I read some of this book, and then I was all the way there. But I just really enjoyed the book, and I really loved everything she had to say, and I love how detailed she is about policy positions, because she really understands policy in a way that maybe not a lot of other candidates do. So I really liked it.
Well, that's a glowing recommendation. Kaz, what did you think?
I'm sort of in a similar situation as you, where I was pretty much Team Kamala to begin with. And then I think Warren has won me over, just like she seems to do every crowd she's in front of. I have really, really enjoyed her more than I expected to. I know she sort of gets a lot of teasing for being the person who's like, I have a plan for that. But she really does have a plan for that. And her plans are very approachable. And I really loved, in this book specifically, and maybe this is why she connects with crowds so well, I love the way that she doesn't talk above people's heads or down to them. Mm-hmm. She tries to connect everything she talks about to something real, and she tries to use very no-nonsense language. Mm-hmm. And her sort of passion about it really comes through very clearly, I think, in the way that she talks about things, and the way that she enjoys just doing the work. I just love that about this book and about her.
All right. So Elizabeth, as the one of us who's not maybe fawning over Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth, I wasn't a fan of Elizabeth. I am and always will be a huge Hillary supporter. I have never really warmed up to Elizabeth Warren, and I was pleasantly surprised by the book, both because I think she's a great writer, really good writer, and kept me engaged, but also, as Kaz mentioned, she delves pretty deeply into public policy and what her platform and her, opinions and positions are on things, which I found really absent in Pete's book. Mm-hmm. There wasn't a lot of meat there, although it was an enjoyable read. So, I am definitely, because of this book, paying more close attention to Senator Warren. And also, given I guess this came out in 2017 or maybe right after the 2016 election. But, her basic message is that our country is broken and that America is not working for all Americans, and that, the middle class is no longer middle class. And so that really resonated with me, because I think that's absolutely the case, and it's gotten significantly worse since Donald Trump took office.
We've mentioned this before, whether we've all read the book or listened to the book. So I read it on my Kindle, but I could hear her voice. Everything I was reading, I was like, I can easily imagine her saying that. I'm hearing her voice saying it. So I don't know. Did you guys listen to it or read it?
Yeah, this is Sophie. I read it and I had the same experience where I felt like I could see her talking. I could see her reading the book to me almost in her voice, which I really enjoyed, because I as a fellow writer, I like it when people have a strong authorial voice. And so I really kind of enjoyed that. But I'd like to know what it would be like. I really wanted to get the audiobook version, but the one I could get, that's at my library, way, way, way impossible to get for years, because it's got such a long hold list. So I had to go with the one of the millions of copies at the Madison Public Library of the hardcover book. But I'd be interested to know if anybody else listened to it, if it was good to hear her voice for real.
This is Elizabeth. I read it. I did not do an audiobook. And I go back to that video that she did where she awkwardly is saying, and it might have been right after her announcement to run, "Oh, hang on, I'm going to crack a beer." And it was so awkward and stilted and inauthentic that as my tweens would say, it was cringy. So I feel like this book for me is better if it's not delivered in her voice. But, I'd be interested to hear if Kaz did an audiobook.
I didn't do the audiobook either. So for once, I read it. But I will say this. So I was surprised that she was from, I forget exactly where, the Midwest, right?
Oklahoma. Yeah.
Oklahoma.
Yeah. So she is so New England, because I went to middle school and high school and college in New England, in New Hampshire, and I can hear that in her so clearly. She is very Bostonian in some ways, not in the stuffy way, but in this sort of casual, sort of common man slang sort of way that I think of Boston as. I very much heard her voice and heard where she's from in her tone in this book, but I did not listen to it as an audiobook.
I think what's interesting about all of us having liked it so much, and this is really a testament to her writing ability. She's a college professor, so perhaps it shouldn't be surprising that she's a good writer. She's written lots of books, but this is not the kind of book I normally read. There's a lot of economic theory, and there's American history, and it's just not my kind of book normally. And usually if I'm reading a book by a person, I want more of a memoir, but she is so good at weaving together memoir and this stuff that's really pretty wonky, and it's so engaging.
You made me think, Kelly, I really like how she would, be on the Senate floor, maybe trying to raise minimum wage or discuss an issue and do a flashback to growing up, when their family was struggling as a middle-class family. And so, but that's hard to do and follow. And she did it really well. I mean, I found myself wanting to turn the page and find out then what happens? And then, then she's back on the Senate floor again. So, I mean, as far as I think of all the books that we've talked about so far, Kamala and Pete's, I think Elizabeth Warren by far is the most prolific and engaging writer.
All right. So this doesn't turn into just a "we love Elizabeth Warren" love fest, which
I didn't say that.
I know.
Her a lot more.
But I think the other three of us have a danger of slipping into that. So let's talk some about, sort of favorite moments, things we really liked learning about her, or, interestingly, one of the things I don't know if like is the best word, but responded to the most wasn't even about her. It was about when she was talking about sort of the genesis of the Republicans deciding that deregulation was the important thing, you know, sort of Lewis Powell, who then became a Supreme Court justice, writing a memo to like big business and saying, you know, let's do this. And, you know, and that sort of being the segue in American history to, instead of us supporting workers, that, you know, suddenly the country is supporting big business more than the workers. And, you know, it's no longer a place where the middle class is growing and growing. And that was so fascinating. And so, like, I mean, it's a thing that right now it's impossible not to think about. You know, how did we get here? How did we get to Trump? How did we get to a supposed businessman as president? But seeing this history and the way she spins it is really makes a lot of sense. And I think the reason I responded so much to it is because it makes it very clear, like, this is the kind of president Elizabeth Warren would be, is the kind of president who thinks deeply about how did we get here? What were the things we were doing that were good for the American people? And how can we get back to that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, and again, as not somebody who was enamored early on, I mean, very plain language, she knows her shit.
Yeah.
Backwards and forward. I mean, granular. She's really smart and is, I mean, she's intelligent and knowledgeable. And I think she's also smart enough to know when she doesn't know to bring in some experts. But I mean, her verbiage around issues, her explaining the issues, I was very, very impressed. I mean, because usually also people who are really great writers are not necessarily that great at economics, and that's a generalization. So, but I was very impressed, and you know, I've seen that in some of her speeches as well. But it was fun and interesting to see that play out in her book.
I mean, not for nothing, but a full 40% of the pages of this book are notes. Like, this is an academic book.
It's interesting because, Kelly, you had said this isn't the type of book that you normally read, but I think so this is kind of, or at least the like sort of nonfiction talking through a particular issue kind of book is the kind of book that I do like to read. I'm not really like normally a huge fan of memoirs unless they're like really exceptional or very, very interesting. I liked The Glass Castle. That's probably the last memoir. Or no, I liked Educated. That's the last memoir I've liked. But I really enjoyed that there were so many, you know, like so many discussions of like economic theory and stuff in the book. And it really made me interested to read her previous book that she wrote, I think in 2004 with her daughter, called The Two Income Trap, where they apparently talk about sort of do an economic analysis of why middle class and poor families in the United States are like becoming increasingly sort of trapped in debt and, you know, their incomes are going less and less far. And so I like reading this book made me really interested to read her previous books from before she was even a senator.
Yeah, I really appreciated her discussion of that whole thing because I don't know that I'd ever seen it framed quite in that way. And she made things click for me. You know how when a teacher describes something and they do it in such a way that it's easy to find places to hold on to it. And she does that. She finds a way to hold on to it, whether it's using really simple language, whether it's a personal example. So for that dual income thing, she sort of painted that story of, hey, yeah, you know, things were getting tough. And guess what? What happened is that in, you know, the 70s, everybody went to work. So it's not that we started doing better. It's that we stopped being a one income household and went to be two income households and dealt with all the problems and the challenges that came along with that. So on paper, it looked better, but the experience was not better for the average American. And for me, that was like a light bulb. I was like, oh, right. You're right. That's exactly what happened. And I don't know that I'd ever seen it that way before.
Right. Like it's, you know, it looks good on paper, but is it really working out for these two income families?
Are there things that we wish we would have gotten in this book and didn't?
I really want an explanation of why she thought it was a good idea to get married and not go to college when she went up.
At 19. At 19.
I don't feel like I got a good enough explanation. And I hurt her because her life experience is very similar to mine. My parents also did not go to college. I'm a first-generation college student. My mom was like, meh, like no one helped me. I put myself through school. But the idea of throwing that all away to get married at 19, no way. So I know she's smart, and I just I'm struggling to understand it.
Well, I think, I just chalked it up to she was super young and just gaga in love. I mean, honestly, thank God I didn't get married when I was 19, because that would have, I'd be on like marriage number 5 by now. But, I mean, it took.
Yeah, I mean, we don't get any of that. So, that's one of the things about Kamala's book that I love so much is hearing how she met Doug, and we got that in Pete's book too, right? Mm-hmm. Like how he and Jason met.
Not as much, just a little bit.
Not as much, but, a little bit. But we don't, I mean, she talks about Bruce, her current husband in the book, but she doesn't really say anything about like how they met or how they fell in love or, it's clear they're very much in love, but I don't know why she got divorced, why she got remarried, so that is a piece that seems to be somewhat missing.
So I think that feeds into some rumors about Elizabeth Warren, right? Aren't there rumors about the fact that Bruce was married when they met?
Oh, I've never heard that.
Yeah, it's something
I
to write
like either.
To go around,
interesting,
but I don't know.
And we don't necessarily need that, but clearly it's all something that we're like, but there's more to this story. Right.
So this is Elizabeth. I really, another part I enjoyed very much is when she calls out kind of some of the bad guys or the villains in, our current political nightmare. And so she, by name, she calls out Betsy DeVos, who's had 0 job experience with education or public schools.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Scott Pruitt, who used to be the AG in her home state, Oklahoma, who then became the head of the EPA. Again, no environmental background whatsoever. And then Rex Tillerson, who has a reputation of being palsy with Putin and the Russians. So, I liked that because I felt like that was giving some kind of tea, a little bit of gossip, fun gossip for us to chew on, a little bit of political intrigue.
What does this book tell us about the kind of president that Elizabeth Warren would be? For whatever it is that we can get out of anything that would tell us whether someone would be a good president, do we think that, or just good is a difficult thing to describe, but, what kind of president would she be?
I think it sort of bolsters my original opinion of her that I have developed throughout the primary, as I think she would be obviously very wonky, but a scrapper, a fighter. I mean, the book is called This Fight Is Our Fight. That's, right. I think she would bring sort of an edge to the presidency that I would very much like to see. Someone who's not just, passionate in sort of an emotional way about policy, but like passionate in almost a physical way, like, raring to go, raring to fight. And that's appealing to me. I got that sense from her book, and that's something that is very interesting and appealing to me.
I think, what maybe one of the things you could say about Obama that he was not quite as good at was really explaining to the American people why they should like the policies he wanted. Mm-hmm. So the Affordable Care Act is sort of the primary example of this, right? Like he and all of the Democrats, not just him, really could have done a better job selling that to people. It became a lot more popular later on when the Republicans were trying to take it away. And, you know, we never quite got that really good sort of salesmanship. I think that is something that Elizabeth Warren could do really well as president, is say, here's what I want Congress to do and here's why, and really convince people that it's in their best interest and they should like this too. And she's thinking about them. And so to me, that's sort of what I got out of the book, is anyone who can write that clearly about things that are really rather difficult to understand, you know, she's gonna be able to convince people, to sell people on the ideas that she has.
I agree. And I think I just want to be clear. I was not a Warren supporter initially. I was not initially. She wasn't my absolute favorite, but she has convinced me through her speeches and through this book that she's the way to go.
I think for me, I had some hesitations about her, and I was sort of looking for the same issues that I had with Pete, right? Is she just going to talk about economic policy, or is she going to talk about how racism intersects with that? Is this just about, you know, economic justice, or does she see how all of those things interact together and how simply addressing one of those elements is not going to resolve racism in this country? And she did resolve that in this book for me. I felt like she paid attention to it, made it clear that she considers that an issue that is in fact connected to economic justice and is important to her. She reiterates it at the end of the book. She talks about the big three things, I think, that she feels like she really needs to work for. And one of them was to address bigotry in this country and racism. And I was like, yes, okay, thank you. I still, the only problem that I have with her as president that I'm still a little bit concerned about is that she really thought it was a good idea to engage with Trump and to, you know, get down and hustle with him, as she calls it. And I don't know that that's productive. She talked about why she thought that was productive. I'd be interested to hear if she still thinks that, because I'm not sure that it has proven itself to be a productive strategy for addressing what this administration does, and the way that Trump operates. I'm not sure it's productive, but that's the only sort of, I'm pretty much sold on Elizabeth Warren, except for that. And for the hesitations I have with how she handled the whole Native American heritage and Pocahontas. I mean, that's still a sore spot, and I think she needs to continue to address that for people moving forward.
Yeah, I think my takeaway is that I'm taking her very seriously as a candidate, which I hadn't before, mostly because I felt like she effectively and intelligently addressed all of these issues that we're facing right now, kind of one by one, you know, economic, racism, discrimination, the college loan debt, the middle class. And she, you know, very effectively raises the alarm on autocracy and this authoritarianism that's happening right now with the Trump administration. And I mean, before we knew it was going to be this bad, right? Because I think the book came out, he had been in office only a few months. And so I felt deeply her plea and her sense of urgency and necessity, and kind of, again, you know, the fight is our fight, the call, you know, let's go. We've got to turn this around. So I am much more interested in learning more about her and following her, you know, journey in this cycle.
The one major issue that I think she doesn't really tackle in the book, at least, she mentions it, but she doesn't really go into it, is climate change. I think that's become so much more urgent in the past 2 years since the book came out. And, you know, she's still, all the things that she's like, I've got a plan for that. I've got a plan for that. And I haven't yet seen from her a climate change plan. I have to assume she's working on one. I certainly hope she does. I think there are enough hints from all of the plans she's put out, all of the things she talks about in the book, the ways she would want to address it, But to me, that's sort of the major thing I'm still waiting for from her, because it's so urgent right now. And I just don't see how we can elect someone who isn't ready to deal with it. Now we've got, 9 to 12 months before a lot of the primaries. So there's still time for all of the candidates to tell us what their vision is, but I'm going to need to see that from any one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Does she have a criminal justice reform policy? I don't think I've seen much from her on that front either.
No, you're right. I don't think I've seen that.
She didn't address that. Mm-mm. I mean, I felt like, what she wanted to get across, and again, she has several books, I haven't read some of the other ones, was, budget and economy, the shrinking middle class, minimum wage. I mean, she addressed some other social issues like racism and discrimination, but I'm not alarmed or bothered that she didn't address some of these other issues like global warming or criminal justice yet, because by reading that book, I just feel like she's so whip smart that she's all over it.
She does have now several plans that are on economic focus. So she has one that's on public lands, and then she has one that's the thing that got me really interested in her and made me really sort of push me towards advocacy is her plan to reduce Black maternal death.
Yeah, which is rising at such an alarming rate in our country,
Mm-hmm.
where it's going down in every single other industrialized nation. It's just, terrifying and unacceptable.
All right. Well, I think we've had a pretty good discussion here. It sounds like we all like the book. I definitely hope that we've given listeners the sense that they should go read it. If Elizabeth Warren isn't your first choice, if she is your first choice, go read the book and see what you think. I don't imagine everyone's going to respond exactly the same way, but it is so clear and such a good read that I really do think people should check it out. And I think it really gives you a good sense of like what her values are and how she'll approach things.
Highly recommend.
All right. So did a couple of Twitter polls to see what we should read next. And Twitter pretty overwhelmingly thought we should read Julian Castro's book, An Unlikely Journey. So for our next episode, which will be June 3rd, we will read Julian Castro's book. But then that's as far out as we've planned so far. So everybody who has thoughts on what we should read next after that, please let us know. So for all of our listeners, we've had some challenging children this evening. So we're going to all run back to our challenging children and make sure they're in bed. So thank you to Sophy and Kaz and Elizabeth for joining me. And thank you to Arthur. Say hi, Arthur.
Hi.
Hi, Arthur.
Hi, Arthur.
Go to bed, Arthur. Nice to your mom.
Thanks for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast.